Keeping a reading journal is so much fun. I'm onto my second one now. I've been doing it for not quite 2 years, and I've learned a few things along the way. But how do you actually start a reading journal? What do you need to start? What should be in it? And how do you make sure that you actually end up using it? Hi, I'm Erin, and I have some ideas about how you might want to approach your reading journal, whether you're just starting out on your first ever, or if you've been keeping one but you're finding it hard to keep up. Before we even start thinking about stationery, the first thing you want to work out is what you want out of your reading journal, because not every reading journal does the same thing. Are you wanting to keep review spreads so that you can remember your thoughts and feelings about the books that you read? Are you wanting to make collage spreads so that you can revel in the worlds of your favorite characters for a little bit longer after you finish the book? Are you interested in keeping statistics in your reading journal or not really? Are you going to rate books? How are you going to rate books? Are you going to rate them by the vibes, or are you going to use a metric like the core pile system, or do you not want to rate books at all? When I first started my first reading journal, this one right here, I had a dual purpose in mind, maybe 3 purposes actually. I wanted to have somewhere non-digital to record my thoughts and feelings about books. I didn't really like doing reviews on Goodreads and that kind of thing. I prefer to keep them somewhat private, so this way I had a way to do that. I also wanted to do the collage thing where only for my favorite books I would just live in that world for a little bit longer and celebrate and enjoy what it was to read that wonderful book. And also I wanted to use up some more of my stationery because I was already bullet journaling and I happened to have a lot. When I started this journal, I really wasn't interested in my reading statistics. I didn't care, but I did want somewhere to keep track of books that I might want to read in the future and a visual representation of my reading goal for the year. The way I structure my reading journal has changed quite a bit since I started, and that's okay. It's normal to change the way that you approach your journal as you go and as you learn, but knowing what I wanted out of my reading journal at first helped me decide which pages I wanted to include and where I should start. Something really important to take into account when approaching your first reading journal is your personal reading speed. We all read at different speeds, and being a slower reader doesn't make you any less valid than someone who reads really quickly. All reading speeds are good and valid. This is purely just a practical consideration. To use myself as an example, I usually read somewhere around 7 to 9 books a month, so there's a fair few there. There are people who read way more than me, and there are people who read less than me. From around about September last year, I started including monthly tracking pages in my reading journal. To be honest, I don't really get any important data out of it, but it is really interesting to me to observe like trends in my reading. Like, do I have a mystery phase or like a horror phase around October and spooky season? Or do I typically read less in March or something like that? It's just interesting, you know? If you're averaging more like 1 to 3 books a month, keeping monthly tracking pages might be overkill. If you really like the idea of monthly tracking pages but you don't feel like you read enough to warrant it, then maybe an alternative could be quarterly or seasonal tracking pages instead. This is something that Anna from Journal Away does beautifully. So instead of my June reading, my July reading, my August reading stats, you could have my summer reading stats, my autumn reading stats, my winter reading stats, so on and so forth. If you like the idea of stats but that's too much work, you can pare it back even more and just do annual reading stats, or you could add a little mid-year check-in. And if statistics pages in your reading journal don't appeal to you, then you should absolutely not include them. They are not a requirement. Nothing in reading journaling is a requirement. You should do it the way that you wanna. As far as how I actually collect these statistics to go into my reading journals, I use an app called Storygraph. I also use Goodreads, but I find that it's not as detailed. As you read, you just log the information about your books, so the format that you read it in, whether it's paperback or hardcover or ebook or audiobook, you can add that information in there. You can update it as you go so it knows your progress. It collates things like your starting and finishing times and the genres and your star ratings and stuff, and it can spit out statistics for you in a range of different time periods, like monthly or specific time ranges if you want. And I just use that data that it offers me and put that into my statistics pages in my reading journal, and that's really fun for me. It may not be for you, and that's okay. You also don't have to keep your reading journal spreads within a dedicated reading journal like I do if you don't feel like you read enough, or if this all feels like too much work but you do want to log your reading somewhere. If you're already doing some kind of bullet journaling or planner practice, then you can include a page or a spread in your journal for that, whether it's just at the beginning of the year and you log all of the books that you've read in the year and that's it. That's what I used to do. Or maybe you include one every month if you read a lot more. There are so many different ways that you can approach this. So the right way for you might not be the right way for for someone else. Consolidating those pages into one planner or notebook can be a really good way to avoid notebook fatigue and having trouble keeping up with a whole new notebook. If you're already kind of doing things in one notebook, then it might be easier to stay on that track. Now that we've considered what you might want to include and your reading speed, we can start thinking about the notebook that you want to use, which is always really fun to pick a new notebook. There are a lot of different sizes and page styles available in the notebook world, trust me, there are a lot. With any kind of DIY planner setup, which this is essentially like a planner for your books, I suppose, I really recommend a dot grid journal, as I think it's just the most approachable, the easiest way to get your thoughts onto the page, because the dot grid allows you to space things out without having to measure things yourself too much. The dot grid is definitely my preferred journal page these days, but you can do this in any journal. So if you already have a notebook on your shelf that you think, I want to use that up, and it has lined pages or gridded pages or blank pages even, it could be a sketchbook, that can still be a reading journal. Taking into consideration what you want to do in the journal and how much you read, what size notebook is going to be the right fit for you. Obviously, if you're choosing a notebook from your stash that you've already got, you might not have the flexibility of choosing a specific size, but this might also give you a bit of an idea about how quickly you might use that journal up, so things to consider. If, however, you are purchasing a new notebook to be your dedicated reading journal, then I have some suggestions. Not suggestions of like specific journals, but suggestions about what size journal might work best for what style of reading journal you might want to do. Let me just grab a stack of examples, because I have a lot. I wasn't kidding. If you have lots of thoughts about the books you read, or you want to do lots of collaging, or you just read lots of books, then I would probably recommend to go with a B5 or a square journal. These ones are just going to give you more page space to play with, which can be beneficial in a lot of ways. They're just big journals. They're big as compared to my head. I currently actually use a B5 journal for my own reading journal, this one right here, and I really like this size for it. It allows me to do a single page review with some collage for almost every book that I read. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. If I really love a book, I might give it 2 pages, or if it's for a book club and we have discussion questions and things like that, the B5 is fantastic for that. For an alternative, if you read so many books and you're not wanting to maybe do all of the collaging and that kind of thing, you can fit several books to a single spread in one of these journals, because there is just that much space. You could still include book covers, reviews, all of the info, but you could fit probably between 4 and 6 book reviews to a single spread in a B5 journal, so lots of flexibility there. Likewise with the square notebook, I think there are probably a few different sizes in the square notebooks, depending on where you're getting them from. All of the journals I'm showing you as examples are from Archer and Olive, except for this one, which is from String and Space. This square journal particularly is 8 inches by 8 inches, which as compared to the B5, you can see it gives you a similar amount of page space, just in a different orientation. I have personally never used a square journal for my reading journal before, but I am planning to use one as my next reading journal, I think. There are plenty of wonderful creators out there who do use square reading journals, so there's lots of inspiration if this seems like it might be the best fit for you. Similar to the B5, I think you can fit a lot in these pages, especially when you open it out. A full spread is massive, it's very wide, so there's a lot of potential there for, again, you could probably divide it into quarters. You could do 4 reviews to a single page if you didn't have heaps and heaps of thoughts. You could do 2 to a page if you have a bit more, or a full page if you have lots to say. A full spread if you have even more. It's probably worth mentioning with these larger page size journals, the ones that I found all seem to be limited to about 160 pages, so it's possible that you will run out if you're a prolific reader and you're doing kind of 1 book to a page, but just things to consider. Then you get to set up another journal, and that's always really fun. So it's worth it, in my opinion. Then we have the more standard to small options for journal sizes. A5 is the most standard journal size I think you'll come across. Most journals, if you aren't already familiar with journal language, most typical standard notebooks are A5. They're the easiest size to get your hands on, they're probably the cheapest to get your hands on, and they come in a range of beautiful covers as well, because they are typically the most popular notebook size. I can still very comfortably fit 2 reviews to a page in this size journal, and I have done quite a bit actually. My very first reading journal of 2, that makes it sound like I've done a lot. I've done enough. My first one, this one, is A5 size from String and Space, although for comparison, the thickness is different because of how much I put in this journal, how much paper I glued in and washi tape I used. it grows. I still think you can very comfortably do a lot of decoration in an A5 size. I think it's a very versatile journal size. And something that's great about A5 journals too is that you can find options that have more than 160 pages. So if you want to go for something with like 196 pages, even sometimes into the 200s, although you will probably start getting into thinner paper there, which can be an issue sometimes with markers. I have a video about bleeding and ghosting and how to avoid it in journals. If you're having trouble with ink going through the page, that might be one to check out. In general, if you don't know where to start, I think A5 is where to start. And for anyone who wants their reading journal to be super portable, maybe you don't read that much, maybe you want to keep it super minimal, maybe you just like a smaller journal, then we've got the traveler size. These are not that easy to find. I don't know that many people who are doing beautiful versions like this besides Archer and Olive. There probably are some. Please let me know in the comments if you know of anyone else who does kind of bullet journal style traveler's size notebooks. As far as size, the traveler's size journals are actually the same height as a traditional A5, but they are narrower. So of course, yes, you're going to have less page space. If you're doing a super minimal review style, I have a video about how to do those as well, if you'd like to see, a little self-spruik. Then this is probably plenty. This is probably fine. With the traveler size, when you open it up, you do still have a decent amount of spread space, which is both the left and the right page combined. So if you wanted to do a really detailed thing for a favorite book, you could still make it work across both of the pages like that, or you could stick to just one review to a page. If you don't like to keep too many thoughts about the books that you read, then you could probably do 2 to a page or to a spread. Traveler's notebook, always an option. While we're discussing beautiful new notebooks, something that I know is a problem for a lot of us is new notebook paralysis. When you get something beautiful and you're like, I can't write in that, I'll ruin it. Honey, the only way you can ruin it is if you don't use it, in my opinion. Your journal doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful, but an empty journal does not have a soul. This has a soul, and I love this journal so much. Am I obsessed with every page in it? No, but I used every page in it, and it's got all of my thoughts and feelings about these wonderful worlds that I lived in and some that I found really boring. Isn't that more exciting than an empty notebook? I think so. If you are struggling with notebook paralysis and you just don't know how to put that first mark on the page, if you're trying to tackle something like a cover spread and you want it to be spectacular, just don't start with that spread. Start with something a little drier, like the page where you list out all the books that you read for the year, where you maybe just have to draw a box, put a little decoration, ease your way into it, dip your toe in, and then you can come back to that overwhelming page once you've warmed up. I also always recommend that you plan everything out in pencil first before you commit to the pen, at least until you've had some practice under your belt. And if pen even still terrifies you a little bit, erasable pens are a really valid option. I used just erasable pens for basically the first year of my bullet journal. They were like training wheels. I don't need them anymore, but they were there when I did need them. Now that we've worked out what sort of notebook might be the best fit for you, we have to consider how much time you actually have to spend in this journal. How much time do you actually have to dedicate to setting it up and using it? We live in a time where we are all really busy all the time, so if you really want to keep a reading journal, maybe it's something you'll have to make some time for, but a detailed collage spread is always going to take longer than something really minimal. If you read 15 books a month and you want to do a collage page for each and every one of them, then it's going to take you longer than someone who only reads 2 books a month and wants to do a collage page for those, you know? So you have to be realistic with yourself about how much time you can put into it. Otherwise, there's a really good chance that you're going to just quit before you even give yourself a good chance at reading journaling. And if you're here watching this, I'm guessing that you want to start a reading journal. Something that I did that I found really helpful in my first journal was that I only did collage pages for the books that I loved. If I really enjoyed a book and I wanted to spend more time in it, then I would dedicate that to the journal. But for the rest of them, I did this really basic bare bones, like box, book cover, star rating, review. That's it. That kept me so on track with this. I'm in a place now in my current journal where I am doing collage pages for most of the books that I read. But even then, I'm not like buying stationery specific to each one. I'm just going through what I have and using stuff that sort of works. I recommend that you start out a little bit more minimalist, and you can always up the ante from there if you find that you want to. But if you go really gung-ho and you jump in and immediately get overwhelmed, then you're probably just gonna quit. And that's not what I want for you. Things like reading statistics or book brackets or book bingo, stuff that you might see in some of the reading journal setup videos that are floating around here on YouTube and elsewhere, they're all so much fun, but they are absolutely not necessary. So if you set some of that stuff up and you find that you're not using it, that's okay. Like it's all right to change the way that you approach the journal as you're using it. If something isn't working for you or your reading habits, you can just switch it up. You're powerful, you can do that. Another consideration, since we're having this discussion in August 2024, is if you are going to start a reading journal now, where are you going to start from? For me, I started in October 2022 in this journal, and I just started from where I was up to. My friend Rachel started a reading journal in the end of May this year, and she backdated everything. She went back to the beginning of the year and she made a collage review page for every single book, plus monthly stat pages for the books that she's read this year. So that took a solid, several weeks of work to get caught up. There's no right or wrong here. It's totally a personal decision. If not starting from the beginning of the year feels wrong to you, you can do that, and maybe you just do easier, minimal reviews for those ones, and you start your collage pages from where you are now. There are so many ways to approach this, so whatever feels right to you is the right thing to do. If all of this is sounding so overwhelming to you right now, this is probably a good time to mention there are companies out there that make pre-printed reading journals. I don't have one to show you because I'm clearly Little Miss DIY over here, but if the sound of a pre-printed reading journal sounds good to you, go for it. You know how at the beginning of a year you go and buy a pre-printed diary or planner? This is the same concept, it's just a reading journal that's already done for you. You could even use it as a jumping off point to get a feel for the process of reading journaling, and then step up to making your own maybe after a year or something, when you fill that one up. So now we've picked our notebook, we know how much time we have to spend, we know what we want out of the journal. What else do you need? This is probably going to sound pretty rich coming from me as a person with an abundance of stationery in her life, but I really recommend that you start with what you have. If you have the means to buy a bunch of stickers and washi tape and stuff to decorate your journal, if you're planning to do collage things, if you're in a position to do that, I don't want to tell you not to do that, but I also think there's something to be said for starting with what you have and working out if you're enjoying reading journaling before you go ahead and invest in a bunch of stuff. Because if you fall off, if you fall out of the habit, or if you're like, oh, this actually isn't for me at all, now you have all this stationery that you may never use. That's not ideal. A new notebook might be a necessity if you aren't an absolute notebook hoarder like me. And if you're starting from a really small stationery collection, you might find it beneficial to buy a couple of brush markers or a single roll of washi tape or a pack of stickers. But I definitely urge you to avoid trying to go on a binge before you've even got your journal. Once again, just want to point you to that video I mentioned earlier where I showed you some ways you can do review pages that are still really cute but also minimal and don't require decoration. They just carry themselves. In this video, I'm not going so much into the actual pages that you might include in your journal. We're talking about the more practical, lifestyle approaches to the journal instead, but I can recommend you some ways to find inspiration. The main places that I've found reading journal inspiration personally are here on YouTube. There are so many wonderful videos from so many wonderful creators, and they're all a little bit different. Everyone approaches it differently. Some people go more minimal, some people go really hard. And also Instagram, of course. And Instagram is particularly a good one because you can zoom in on people's posts on their feed and count the dots. So if you like the way somebody has set up a particular spread, you can zoom in and copy it exactly by the dot grid spacing. Unless you're using a different size journal to the person that you're kind of borrowing the idea from. If they're using a B5 journal and you've got a Traveler's, you're gonna have to condense, you're gonna have to adapt it a little bit, but it is totally still possible. Also, if there's something you want to track or something you want to include in your reading journal that you can't think of a way to approach it, I always have this problem with the series tracker. I haven't tried one that I feel really works for me yet. You can search for that specific thing, particularly on Instagram. You can search for reading journal series tracker and ideas will come to you. So whatever it is, there's a really good chance that if you can't work out how to approach something, someone else has already done it, so you can look for their ideas. Those are my tips to kind of make sure that your reading journaling journey is a good one and not a rocky ride. I'm all about making journaling really accessible to everybody and working out how to fit it into your life in a way that's sustainable. If you're having problems with your reading journaling journey at the moment, please let me know what they are, and maybe I can make another video to tackle some of those. If you have questions about how I make my own reading journal work for me, drop those in the comments too. And if you are a reading journaler already and you have your own tips that you'd like to share with the community, pop those down in the comments too. It would be really cool if we could turn the comment section into a resource for baby reading journalists. That would be so lovely. I'll pop you a link over here to my reading journal playlist, and underneath that is a link to a video where I showed you a bunch of different reading tracker ideas as well as including the grid spacing measurements for A5 journals on the other side in case you want to copy them exactly. That's a thing that you can do. I hope you enjoy. I'll catch you again soon.